Welcome to Trekosophy, the Star Trek Philosophy Podcast. This episode is recorded on September 18th, 2013. Today, he threw the laws of physics right out the window because they're just so inconvenient. It's Ben McLean.
Yeah, every time I need to get to work in the morning, I just change the gravitational constant of the universe.
Also, we have our Canadian friend, the Canuck on the Eastern Coast, the deep drinker of the Dark Draft, the Captain of Canada, the boozer of News Brunswick.
Brandon! Change him back!
Oh, very well.
Well, tonight we're talking about True Q and the hot little Miranda, or what was her name?
Amanda.
Amanda, the hot little Amanda. Okay, we're off to a great start. Everyone's silent.
All right, let's see. Do I need to take the lead in this, or what?
Well, look, before you do, let me go ahead and give the really quick one-sentence synopsis Memory Alpha gives us. Q once again graces the Enterprise with a visit, claiming that a young intern aboard is really a Q.
Graces.
Graces. I like how they...
More like plagues.
Plagues.
Self-discovery, romance, betrayal.
Oh, yeah, romance.
Yeah, this is kind of...
The episode had it all. Well, there's an interesting list here that you put together, Ben. I'm really impressed with it.
Sorry.
Romance. Oh.
Okay. I just added to our document romance as a topic, and then bromance, Q and Picard hugging.
What about that's romance?
I just thought it would get a laugh. That's not a topic.
Yeah, I'll cut that out. Don't worry.
Okay. No. That was a good joke. Keep that in.
Well, what about the philosophy of getting anything you want?
Yeah, there is just so much we could do here. Do you think we ought to go there right now, or should we sort of try to take in a sort of chronological order that the episode gives?
Oh, let's go there. You go there as soon as the episode starts, because really you find out that before the opening sequence, before we find out the voyages of the Starship Enterprise, you see Amanda being able to manipulate reality around her. So, is it a good thing to really just have that capacity to just get what you want?
Also, does this episode have an underlying theme about dogs? I mean, they keep showing up.
Oh, yeah.
Twice only, though, right?
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's not enough.
We've talked about the Ring of Gyges on this show before. That whole idea of absolute power corrupts absolutely. Okay. So this is familiar ground for avid listeners of Trekosophy, all one or two of you in Radio Land. Well, no, we're going to be famous in the future. They're going to build Bill and Ted statues of us. So all of you, all of you future people.
Rasmussen visited us recently. He told us all this.
Yeah. All of you future people who are avid listeners of Trekosophy will know we've covered this before. This idea of the Ring of Power, and we even talked about it last week somewhat in our Q episode part 1. And so I want to not just rehash that, but also take it in directions we haven't before if we're going to cover it.
Well, your memory is better than mine. Something about Boozer of New Brunswick. What I was thinking was the concept of absence and denial as something that can be spiritually empowering.
Oh, really? How is that?
Well, I mean, to just find out your Q, yeah, sure, superficially it's a good thing. But in the long run, what were we talking about before we hit record? The fall of Rome. Augustine's criticism is that Rome had become so powerful and its leaders could basically have anything they wanted, not just like one king, but there was an elite. The people calling the shots could basically have anything they wanted, and it left them so spiritually depraved. What's the quote I heard? God gives a bird food, but it doesn't put it in its nest. The idea that you'd have to work for something can be empowering and it can be strengthening. And not having to work for anything might leave you spiritually corrupt. And so perhaps finding out your Q, although superficially good, and who's going to say no to it, might not be the best news you've ever heard.
Well, yeah, but part of the trouble with that, well, here in this episode, Amanda is not seizing power. That's the thing. She doesn't, at least if she does, it's reluctantly. Because at each stage, she just wants to go back to having a normal life. Mm-hmm. She does not have a lust for power in her. Until she tries it out in the fantasy scene.
Right. That's a good point.
We're going to go there later. But before that, she doesn't have a lust for power in her at all. She feels extremely threatened by this whole idea of, this sort of awesome responsibility of having all the Q powers. She knows that with great power comes great responsibility, and she doesn't feel up to the responsibility that this power gives her. And it's not something that's been reached by external artificial means. But if it's true that it's because it's from her own internal nature, then it is part of her. It's an inherent power she has naturally.
She was born with. We can only really speculate what her formative years were like, though. Did her parents try to discipline her not to use her power? Was she given free reign to use it whenever she wanted? We don't know. In addition, can we infer from this that people in the future are much more in control of their audience? Impulses? Yeah, because it won't be posted for a few weeks.
Okay. People in the future won't be more control of their impulses.
Yeah. Will that be true, or is it just her that she is very much more in control of her impulses than most people? We don't know.
The episode does. I think she does state at one point that she did not consciously control. She never made a conscious decision to utilize these powers because she didn't know she had them until she came on the Enterprise. She remembers wishes of hers inexplicably coming true before, but never an intentional usage of them before she saves somebody's life on the Enterprise. And so that's a glimpse that we get into it in the episode. See, this is why everybody needs to watch the episodes before we do Trekosophy.
I do.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I remember that, but
I'll try not to bring that up again.
What about the puppy? She made puppies appear.
Yeah.
Right after she arrived, and she just treated it like, oh, this is natural.
Yeah.
Y'all gotta go now. You can't be here.
Yeah. That was kind of a fun Twilight Zone opening. I think this episode seems to be about, it's about a lot of different things.
Yeah.
One of the things it seems to be about is self-discovery. And it's this idea that as we hit our adolescent years, we have to make a series of decisions about to what extent we are going to adopt for ourselves that which has before then been our parents' values or our society's values.
Right.
And also it's about intercultural, I guess you might say intercultural dissonance or something like that. There's probably some $40 academic term for it, or however you say that. But conflict of a kind where someone is torn between two different cultures and has to make a decision about which culture they are going to embrace, or to what extent they are going to embrace the different cultures they are stuck in between. I think you could use this episode to make, metaphors about Western influence in the third world, where Q is the Western influence and the third world is the Enterprise. Because it's a sociologically similar set of experiences on a much grander technological scale, You see what I'm saying here?
Yeah, I do.
So those seem to be themes in the episode that I'm picking up on just now. I don't think I did when I was watching it, but thinking about it now, those are themes in the episode I'm picking up on. So here's the thing. If we believe, Brown versus Board of Education in the United States was a court case that happened in 1954. The Supreme Court decided that separate public schools for black and white students was unconstitutional. And among the decisions of the Supreme Court, I think this stands as a relatively good one. I think that's a fair statement. I think most would agree, legal scholars and common people alike, that Brown versus the Board of Education was a reasonably good decision, especially compared to a lot of the other ones the Supreme Court makes. But if we accept that premise of integration, then it seems to me we ought to reject the premise of this episode that the person caught between different cultures has to choose one and, go with it. Which one is your true self? Go with that one. You can't compromise between the two. That is something this episode insists on.
She should have found a way to integrate her Q powers with her humanity.
That's what I'm suggesting. It seems like that was another way this episode could have been written and probably should have been. But it wasn't. I don't think that was even on the table, or at least it didn't seem to be.
I know what I was arguing some time ago. I don't see what advantage human beings would necessarily have over Q. I mean, in practice, Qs can be very chaotic and just undisciplined. But Amanda would be chaotic or undisciplined in either case. I don't see what advantage humanity would have to offer her.
Well, you said it yourself last week. Picard said it. He would put humanity's moral center against the Q any day.
Yeah, but she would have that same moral center regardless if she embraced Q-ness or humanity.
Are you sure? How do you know?
Yes. Because I'm just full of facts like that.
Okay. Well, do you have a justification for that, though? Not really.
Have a justification?
Okay. No, I don't always have a justification for everything I think, but
hold on. Do you have a justification to say that should be different?
Well, yeah, that seems to be the narrative of the episode.
Because yours is the positive affirmation.
What? That it would be different. She's
just going to change to be a totally different person if she becomes a Q. Her moral compass would change.
Picard thinks that, and the episode seems to suggest that the Q have a radically different sense of morals, perhaps none, than humans have. Picard says, basically, you seem to be governed by no code whatsoever. Remember?
Yes.
I mean, Picard lays the case out, and that seems to me to have become the default position because it's the position the episode presented.
Well,
and so if you think the episode's wrong on that, giving reasons might be a good idea. I'm not sure. You might be right, but I might like to hear some reasons why you're right, rather than just taking your word for it, Brandon.
you don't have to take my word for it. I just, I don't think I was saying anything shocking or anything provocative. I was just saying I didn't see that she would change. Now, the Voyager episode, the name of it's escaping me, but it was the Q Civil War.
Yeah, the Q and the Gray.
Q and the Gray, yeah.
I know that because of my history knowledge, not my Star Trek knowledge.
They conceive a child in vulgar Q fashion. And the point of them conceiving a child was that it was going to have some sort of a semblance of humanity. It wasn't just another Q being, it was going to be raised up in the same way humans would raise their children. And that was supposed to bring some sort of a unity, injecting humanity into the Q continuum.
Yeah, why did Amanda do that?
Well, evidently she didn't. But I mean, that was the whole point. When you take this human being, it just doesn't all of a sudden. A leopard cannot change its spots. That's quote there. Well, I don't see why her nature would just shift. I don't see it. And I don't know, the other one doesn't see it. The Voyager writers wrote about much the same thing.
I'm sorry, what?
Did I fail miserably at making my point?
No, I didn't. There was some kind of audio thing. I didn't hear what you said.
No, I was just saying that the Voyager writers of that Q and the Gray episode seem to just figure that if somebody's raised in this human way, then they're going to retain that. They're going to continue.
Yeah, I think that was a completely different group of writers than from this episode, though. Because the Q and the Gray seems to contradict this one in its essential plot quite blatantly. I mean, I just can't see how you can reconcile both of these stories together.
Okay, well then we'll just have to set that aside then for now. And just focus on this one episode.
Okay, yeah. Well, Ben was just asking me, do I think Amanda would retain her composure in the light of her new Q powers are going into the continuum? Well,
that's right. He was asking you to justify your position on that, and you're using the Q and the Gray as your justification.
Well, to me, it just seems like that's the default position. I mean, the fact that she would have some radical shifts in her nature. I remember Picard saying something about Q not being fit to be her judge, and perhaps there's something wrong with the continuum, but I don't think that he was worried that was going to warp her soul. I don't recall that in the episode.
All right, that wasn't... Well, wait, yeah, it was. Because that romance scene where she tries to get Riker to love her, she sees that there's something going on there.
Yeah, let's go ahead and bring that into the mix here then. Yeah, so about halfway through the episode or so, we see she's starting to get interested in Riker, just like every other woman in the universe. And she decides, you know what,
Which is in itself creepy.
Exactly. She knows that she can't have him normally. He's pretty much rejected her, but she decides, you know what, I can actually make you love me if I want to. And she snaps her fingers, and essentially. And
Riker lost his will.
Right. But if you recall, soon afterwards, she realizes, you know what, this isn't real. It's no fun just making you do what I want. I guess maybe she is kind of disciplined in that fashion.
Even though she had her Q powers, her human self-discipline.
So basically, she realizes that she can really get whatever she wants, but she knows she has the discipline to resist it until the end, when people's lives are at stake.
Yeah. She seems to handle it pretty well. But why then does the episode sort of force her to choose between leaving with Q or staying with the Enterprise?
They had to have some sort of dilemma to resolve. And so the writers decided to say, hey, let's make the Q really nasty, that they're going to kill her if she doesn't want to, if she tries to stay and uses her powers while she's here on the mortal plane, basically.
You've brought up I don't know whether you realized you brought it up, but I think you might have brought up a point that is probably relevant to all of Trekosophy, and that is it is quite possible to overanalyze things. I mean, looking for all these deeper meanings in Star Trek episodes all the time.
Overanalyzing is what we do best.
Yeah, it's what we do here on Trekosophy, but it might not always be the best way of
I agree with you. I figure, why not just let her stay with the humans and other mortals and live her normal life and use her powers whenever she wants if it's going to be beneficial to human life.
Right?
But no, they decided, oh no, the Q have to kill her if she's going to do that.
Yeah, have to. Yeah. Life would be so much easier if it just wasn't for all this killing that goes on. I mean, it's just this annoying killing. You just undo all the killing and everything will be fixed. Just make it impossible for anybody to ever kill anybody else ever again. We're all going to be Highlander immortal, only without the cool sword fights.
So what is this little point you got here? Q being thoughtless about something? Or have you already discussed
Q displays on numerous occasions in this episode an extreme rudeness that even goes beyond his normal snide mannerisms. That is just completely insensitive. And here's the thing. Oh,
go ahead.
Well, he's not only omnipotent, but he's supposed to be omniscient. So he knows what polite behavior is.
Are you sure he's omniscient? I'm not sure they've ever really explicitly stated that in any episode. Omnipotent, yes. Now, I do recall the other Q on that episode where he became immortal. The other Q said, "You remember who you're talking to? All-knowing, all-seeing, something like that." So that was just an offhand remark that the Q are all-knowing. But the Q that we all know and love, his behavior doesn't seem to indicate that he knows what everyone is thinking. Well,
that's true, yeah. I mean, he does say it from time to time, will I do? But he doesn't act that way. Well, I'm not sure that his behavior in the episode goes beyond what we're accustomed to thinking of when we put the first time you meet him, he puts humanity on trial.
Yeah.
Another time he's this tempter for Riker. Another time after that, he introduces humanity to the board, killing 18 people. And basically, well, there's your bloody nose, and we taught you a lesson. What? 18 people died next to Q? He's not a nice fella.
Yeah, at his core, he's not, I guess.
He is.
Well, it seems to me that if anyone has omnipotence, then they will have omniscience as soon as they want it.
Well, maybe he doesn't want it. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the only way you can have someone who has omnipotence but doesn't have omniscience is if they don't want it. I mean, if you think about it, that seems like a logically necessary conclusion right there. Doesn't it?
Maybe he can just will himself to have omniscience.
Seems like
just snap his fingers and suddenly he's got it.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, that seems like
it makes sense, but how do you account for his behavior?
I think,
or is he just
that's what I was gonna bring up. Accounting for Q's behavior on the hypothesis that he is in fact omniscient. I think. Well, I was going to pose that as a question because I didn't think it would be disputed that Q is omniscient.
Yeah,
but
actually disputed you.
Yeah, well, it seems like intuitive to me that Q would be omniscient, but maybe he isn't.
And why would he have put humanity on trial if he knew that Picard was going to pass the test by freeing the space jellyfish?
Well, that goes into something apologists have said quite often, and that is he couldn't know Picard's going to pass the test unless there is an actual test passing that Picard actually does. You know, the event isn't there to know unless the event actually happens.
I think this might be one of those instances of being over analytical. I mean,
I agree.
The truth is, I think it has its place, like to philosophically analyze what goes on in the show, but to try to piece it together and to say, okay, how is this even possible? Well, a good lot of it isn't possible.
Well, we think that about the technology. But the philosophy of it, are we stuck to say that same kind of thing about the philosophy of the show? That the philosophy is in the long run just as impossible?
No.
Was that a no?
Yeah, heavens no.
Well, in that case, this kind of thing might actually be in order. Well, I was going to say, he's a really rude bastard.
Well, I think you can resolve this by simply saying that based on Q's past behavior, we know he has an edge. We know that he has no moral difficulties whatsoever. And so this episode probably just brought it out a little more to the forefront.
Okay, well, here's the thing, though.
Yeah.
He seems to be sort of acting against his own best interests strategically in that ridiculously awful direct approach he takes. Walking through the wall, totally creeping out Amanda.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like somebody who is, is there a deeper agenda going on there that, I might be missing? Or is he really acting against his own interests in ways which he could have avoided just by using his Q powers to avoid it?
You think he could have been a bit smarter about that?
What?
You're saying you think he could have been a bit smarter about that?
A bit whatter?
Smarter.
Oh, yeah, smarter, yeah.
Oh, the way he just strolls right up to her and said, "Very impressive the way you contained that explosion. What else have you done?" She says, "I don't understand." He says, "Telekinesis? Teleportation?" Then he glances over at Picard and says, "Spontaneous combustion of someone you don't like."
I loved that. That was a great line. Maybe the writers were just moving heaven and earth to get it so John Delancey would get to say that line. And that's
probably
any excuse to get John Delancey to be able to say that. We'll take it. spontaneous combustion of people you don't like. Yes, that would be excellent in politics. Anyway,
so that
what are our other topics?
That covers his thoughtlessness. Have we already discussed pitting human morality against Q morality?
A little bit.
We have discussed killing Amanda or her parents anyway, right?
Oh, right, yeah. Here's the moral argument that the Q would make to justify that, I'm guessing. And it'd be something like this. If we let all these beings with omnipotent powers go around loose, there's a good chance they'll destroy the whole universe. And it's a reasonable
if they destroy
premise.
If they destroy the universe, they destroy themselves.
Yeah, they might destroy themselves and the universe.
So they have some sense of self-preservation then.
Oh, wait! You didn't let me finish. I'm saying.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The Q are saying that if people were able to, there are people who have omnipotent powers running around willy-nilly.
Right.
There's a good chance those people will destroy the universe and destroy themselves.
See.
And then the Q would say, the destruction of the universe is a bad thing. That's our moral premise. Do you want to argue with that premise with a Q? I don't think so. So, I mean, it's one thing to say you don't like consequentialism. It's another to say, well, destroying the universe might not be a bad thing. So sometimes a consequence might be admissible when you get to something that's that ridiculous. And so what he's saying here is really that the killing of Amanda's parents is really the only way to stop someone with omnipotent Q powers, they would claim, is to kill them, or at least to turn them into something that doesn't have Q powers like happened to Q. But whatever, let's assume that the only way to stop them would have been to kill them. Would that have been morally justified?
Well, that is a good question.
And people say, what philosophy of Star Trek?
What's the likelihood that they're going to destroy the universe? Though?
We don't know. You don't know.
I mean, because really, my neighbor could kill me, so maybe kill me in my life, or I could just go kill him.
Well, hold on a moment here. Didn't he say that Amanda's parents had set aside their powers, i.e. they couldn't get them back, so that they could become human and have a child?
According to Q...
I can't remember. Which is it? Or did they stay, semi-Q or something?
According to Q, they made an oath or pledge to give up their Q powers, and they sort of violated the terms of that pledge, resulting in their destruction.
Oh, so they used their powers after Amanda was born.
Yeah, at least that's what Q says. And so it's sort of like a capital punishment for a crime is how they would justify it. They would say,
"Yeah, I see
this is capital punishment for the continuum."
Uh-huh.
They've committed a heinous crime, or at least continuum considers to be a heinous crime: the abuse of the Q powers after making a promise that you'll never use them again. Now, I just think they're just full of crap myself. I mean, I just would not accept those premises.
Yeah, that wouldn't justify killing someone.
Well, two things. First of all, every civilization has its own set of laws and rules, things you can and cannot do, and various punishments for those that you shouldn't do. We can consider the Q continuum itself. It's a civilization of sorts.
Yeah,
they have their own set of laws. We don't know exactly what those laws are, what those punishments